Greetings, everyone.
Hi,
We
everyone.
are here with Miss Kristin Oropeza. She is doing a presentation on elevating inclusion, how AI is revolutionizing special education practices. And I have to say, I have been in a session very similar at the university level and am fascinated with this content. And it really is impressive. So I think you're really in for a treat today. And I'm going to honor Kristin's time and turn it over to Kristin, and I will be in the background. And if I can just have about 5 minutes at the end, Kristin, to put in the reflection link. If I have to jump off early, I'll just put it in the chat. And if y'all have any questions with me, you know how to reach me. And we got another person coming in. So, Kristin, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruth. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us at 2 o'clock on, what is this, Tuesday afternoon. I'm going to be talking about AI in special education practices this afternoon. I've shared the bit.ly for the slides, but I'll also put a PDF copy in the presentation folder in Google Drive. There's also a bit.ly there if it's easier for you to follow along on your mobile device. Just a couple different ways to access the presentation. When you access it, it's a published web link, so you should be able to access all of the hyperlinks included, everything that links out to resources or another site. You should have access to. All right. So in the sake of time, because I know everybody is busy, and I want to value your time here today. I'm just going to get right started. If there's any questions along the way, please drop them in the chat. I know Ruth is here, and there will be some time at the end for questions. I will admit that it's a little challenging to go back and forth between the presentation and the Zoom chat, but I will try my best. And if you know how to utilize the reactions on Zoom, you can raise your hand if you have questions at any point, when there's a natural stopping point for questions. Um, so just to kind of give you a little background about who I am and what kind of authority I have to talk about, AI and special ed. My name is Kristin Oropeza. I currently work as an community coordinator for a nonprofit based here in California called Common Sense Media. Um, we do a lot of work with parents and advocacy groups and teachers, especially about the just ways kids have access to tech and how they hopefully thrive in a digital learning environment. Um, I left the classroom actually 3 years ago this month after being a long time special ed teacher. I was working in special ed for about 14 years, mostly as a special day class teacher. I did do like a short hiatus as a technology coach, which I absolutely love. Technology, especially ed tech, is a very much a passion of mine. So I get very excited when I talk about some of these things. But please, again, feel free to stop me, ask questions. I really enjoy that. Um, Apart from my work with Common Sense, I also work part-time for the LA County Office of Education. I have this really just distinct privilege of being able to work with new teachers. I serve as an induction mentor, so those of you who are clearing your credential or those teachers who are looking to clear their credential, I work as an induction mentor with those teachers, and then I also get to work as a practicum supervisor with intern teachers. So I get to work with like brand new teachers in the classroom, which is always really exciting. Um, Obviously you can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't take the classroom out of the teacher, right? Like I love working in education, and I don't think I would be able to do anything else at this point. It's just so ingrained in like what I do, even at my current workspace. Um, I put some badging. I'm all for like micro credentialing, so you'll see I've got some badges there, and just different ways to connect as well. If you are on social media and you want to talk and you want to chat, I've put some ways to connect with me. So feel free, after this, if you have questions, especially as you're going through the resources and are like, gosh, what did Kristin say about this? Please feel free to reach out. I am really an open book, and I just love chatting with educators and doing that. I'm going to move on here. And I'm actually going to get out of my presentation really quick just so I can switch over to Menti. Um, I think it's always important for me to know who's in the room. And so if you can go to Menti, you could do that by two ways. You can actually go to menti.com and input the code right here. Or if you have a mobile device, you can join using your mobile device. You're just going to scan the QR code. And I just have a couple questions. And whoops, I'm going to go back here real quick. Let me exit here. Just so I know kind of who's in the room. It helps me direct some of the conversations that we'll have today. So I'm going to present here. And if you can, again, go to menti.com. You can use the code right up at the top of the screen. It's 59586546. And it's really easy to join. And if you can't, for whatever reason, join by the code, or I can put the QR code back up, you can also just drop in the chat. But I'd like to know like what your role is currently, in your school community. Are you an educator? Are you an administrator? Are you a TOSA, right? Or a coach? Sometimes I get paraprofessionals in these sessions. If you're something other than that, if you work for higher education or another, teacher-based program, feel free to drop that as well. So I see a couple other, somebody put other educator. Does anybody need the QR code? I can go back to that as well if we need that. And again, I'll put the link directly in the chat in case anybody needs that, menti.com. And you're going to put the code 59586546. Thank you to those who've already responded. I'll just wait a couple seconds more here. Again, if you can't access the Menti, please feel free to just drop it in the chat, your role in your school community. All right, thank you those who are putting in your responses there. I'm going to go to the next question here. And it's going to ask you how familiar you are with AI and where you are in your journey with AI exploration. Are you at the level of where you haven't touched it yet? Are you just beginning to explore? Are you using some AI for tasks and productivity? Or do you consider yourself a pretty regular user with AI and using it for personal efficiency? Thank you to those who are putting in their answer choices. I see we're kind of across the board at this point, right? Just beginning to regular users, kind of like middle of the road. That's really good because this session, I hope, it kind of meets the needs of like everybody. I want to say mostly like beginning and those more intermediate users. Um, if you use AI regularly, I really hope you stay and you get something out of this session. If what I'm talking about is just like, and I don't take offense to you bowing out and checking out any of the other sessions that are going on. So please know like this is your time, and I want to make sure we value and respect that. All right, so thank you those of you who responded. We're going to go back now, and now that I kind of know where you guys are at with AI, and we'll talk about what we're going to, whoops, I don't want to share, what we're going to be discussing in today's session. So I kind of set an agenda. This might be very ambitious with the time we have today, but I figure we have about an hour or so, maybe a little bit less with the time at the end for questions. But I want to give a really high level overview of just like what AI is, right? Demystifying AI. I want to talk a little bit about AI in the context of the special education classroom, like where we're seeing AI come up and where it has been. AI is not new. It's actually been around for quite a bit of time at this point. It's just getting a lot more attention now in the news, and so new tools are always coming up and things like that. But we want to just kind of talk about where we see it in its place in the classroom. We're going to introduce some tools and resources for you as an educator. I really want to preface it by saying, like, we talk about when we talk about the context of special ed, of AI and special ed, um, I'm going to talk about where you might see AI in the classroom. This is not like an endorsement to go say, like, go you use AI with your students today. I think there's a lot of safeguards and things we need to consider before we start using AI tools like directly with students. Um, so there's a little bit at the end today where I'll talk about that. But this is more for you and how you can use AI just to increase your efficiency as an educator. And although I talk a lot about, like about how special educators can use AI, I think some of these tools are really great for like any teacher who uses AI. We're going to talk about, how AI enhances accessibility and inclusivity, will empower you with your learning about AI towards the end, and then we'll talk about a little bit about like best practices with AI. All right. Thank you, Vanessa. I'm just seeing your message in the chat, so thank you for sharing there. I'm trying to go back and forth if I can between the presentation and chat. All right, so just again, and I always like to preface this presentation. I share a lot of resources, right? I mentioned earlier, EdTech is a big passion of mine. I love talking about it, and so I get overly excited sometimes talking about just all the cool things that are out there for teachers. And so my hope for you is that you walk away from this presentation with maybe one thing, one tool, one new practice, something you can do that you're excited to try like tomorrow, right? I don't expect everybody to leave being an expert in AI, right? Because there are no AI experts at this point. It's rapidly changing. But I hope that you have at least one thing you're excited about. And so like noting that, right, there are going to be tons of links I share, some things you may, just based on your current experience with AI and familiarity, you may not be comfortable just like diving in. So I just want you to feel that you have the space to just sit and get this information to explore. There are going to be times where I'm going to ask you if you're on a device where you can open up and just play. I think that is such a huge component of adult learning, right? That we sometimes forget about how important exploration and playtime is with things that we are being asked to engage with or teach, right? Sometimes, we get mandates from our school saying like, here's this new tool, we expect you to teach it without very, very little guidance, right? Or training or instruction. And so I would like to provide the opportunity for you guys this afternoon. All right, so moving on here. Our essential question for today, and it's something I like you to keep kind of front of mind, is just how can artificial intelligence be utilized in the special education classroom as an innovative tool for educators, for you, right, to help students with diverse and varying needs. And so to talk about that, again, I want to kind of give you a high level overview of AI. This is, I'm going to say it's like very, very much simplified, right, for the teacher audience. And so I'm not doing a deep dive into the various types of AI today. I'm just kind of providing you with a high level kind of overview just in case, you don't have that background coming into this session. So essentially, what is AI? Artificial intelligence refers to the computer systems designed to perform tasks, right, that normally require human intelligence. AI is really good at recognizing patterns, generating text, predicting outcomes based on data. Um, it's not so good with the other stuff, right? Like the more human, like, task and we'll get into that a little bit today. But it is really good with analyzing data. Um, there's different types of AI, right? You might have heard things like machine learning, right? Machine learning, the very simplified definition is that machine learning learns from data, improves over time, right? An example of this in the classroom would be like a tool like Otis, right? That tracks student behavior or things like assessment data and identifies the patterns within that. We have the natural language processing. If you use ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is a large language model, right? That falls underneath this category. It helps computers understand and generate human language. An example, like in practice, right, would be like AI writing assistants that help draft IEP goals or that simplify directions for an assignment. And then the last type of AI is what we call computer vision, and it allows AI to kind of see images and videos. Um, an example of this, right, would be some of the accessibility tools that we see that read text aloud from pictures, right? Tools like Seeing AI or Snap and Read. Um, Let me make sure there's a question in the chat here. Nope. Okay. I do see somebody in the waiting room, so let me admit them. Um, So essentially, I want you to think of AI as being assistive technology, right? Because that's really what it is. AI serves as a tool to enhance the educational experience, right, of our students with special needs, helping them overcome barriers in learning and communication, right? Um, what AI doesn't do, right? It does not take the human interaction, right? And those traditional teaching methods out of the practice, right? Um, and I will hopefully relay that at every point of the presentation today. Just because you're using AI, it is not the end all, like to all, to all your problems in the classroom. It is, I think of it a lot of the time as like a thought partner, right? I don't start my day by using AI, but when I do use AI is usually for maybe things like brainstorming or maybe checking things that I've already done and created, and just having another pair of eyes on it, right? To provide some feedback that I may not have access to, outside of that. All right. So moving on to some tools and resources for educators. I want to talk about a little bit about that context of AI in education currently, right? Um, some teachers might see AI as something, right, like foreign in the classroom at this point. Um, uh, and and I want educators to realize that AI has already been used and is in some of the apps and platforms that you already use in the classroom. Um, Anytime you see an app, right, that is self-adapting or self-learning, it's probably using AI, right? An example of this, and it's something when I was in the classroom at my last district, we used Happy Numbers, right? Happy Numbers uses AI to analyze patterns and to help with the self-learning. Um, Other platforms like IXL. My daughter's school uses IXL. They're big IXL proponents. And so that uses that self-adapting learning model. And then another program would be the CK to 12 Foundation. They have quite a few resources, including they have an AI assistant that's particularly tailored to students, and that uses obviously AI. Other things like automation for administrative tasks, right? Um, Automating things like grading, right? Digital asset like categorization, or timetable scheduling, right? Those things utilize AI and really can help increase the time that teachers spend with students, right? Instead of having to do menial tasks that could be delegated out. And it provides, right, enhanced engagement for a lot of the platforms that we might be using with students. And then obviously there's some data-driven insights. If you use Google Classroom as your LMS within your school site, Google Classroom has some AI within, especially when you're looking at the grades and analytics part, that utilizes that. All right. So what are the challenges, right? And how can AI assist? So we have, obviously, as special educators, we have some challenges. The first and probably largest being, like, we have classrooms where the diverse learning needs fall in a very large spectrum, right? And AI can help support teachers, right? And just providing personalized learning experiences for each student. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can utilize that today, as far as lesson planning goes, and creating. I was just in a session where they talked about differentiation of instruction, and voice and choice, and AI and its tools can help increase that for the teacher. We have things like communication barriers, right? We know a lot of times we get students who are multilingual learners. In my 14 years as a special education teacher, I had quite a few times where I had newcomers come into my classroom, and they didn't speak English at first, and it was challenging to communicate them, even with my minimal Spanish skills. And I think about, when I think about, like this, I think of an intern I'm working with, and she just got a student who only speaks Mandarin, and was asked to, from day one, start pulling the student, and getting her assessed, and like what her skills were, right? And this teacher had no idea how to communicate with this child who didn't speak English, until she pulled out her phone and she used the feature on Google Translate, where you can actually speak into it and it'll translate. And that was how she was using, AI, right, to help communicate with the student. And luckily, the student obviously has had many gains over the last few weeks, and no longer requires that. But when we think about tools that can be used like right away, right? Especially in these kind of cases where we're not given a lot of support outside of what we have, at our disposal in our hands. Um, the other challenges we see obviously are behavior and engagement, right? We have classrooms that are prone to exhibiting some more challenging behaviors, right? Aggression, hyperactivity, attention deficit. And while AI, I'm going to say this really clear, it will not fix those things, right? AI is not your classroom behavior management, right? Again, nothing is going to replace the teacher doing those things, but it can provide tools, right, for, again, providing more personalized learning experience for the student, which is going to help engagement, right? If they're more prone to connect with the content, they're hopefully going to be able to stay on task, right? When the content is too hard, when it's above their reading level, right? Students tune out. And it's also going to help with tracking behavior, right? Analyzing patterns, and identifying areas that teachers can use, like more proactive strategies, for intervention. And then obviously the challenge that I've seen, right, and I don't see it any better over the next 4 years, is just resource limitations, right? We are so often, especially as special educators, faced with insufficient funding, right? Staffing shortages. I can't tell you the amount of times, like, I had, especially in my last classroom before I left, um, I was supposed to have two aides in my classroom, and the amount of days that I only had one or none because they were getting pulled to go to other classrooms. Um, I don't know what that said about me as a special ed teacher, right? Like I hope my principal thought I was capable enough to handle the classroom by myself. But we know that there's challenges, right, to getting the resources and things our students need. Um, Again, AI will not fix that, okay? But it can help alleviate some of the tension, right? And resource limitations by providing some cost-effective solutions, right? And automating some routine tasks that you're gonna do in the classroom. All right. So just by, you can, if you want to utilize the reactions tool, there's underneath reactions at the bottom of your screen where you see your Zoom bar, you have the ability to like raise your hand, and you can also utilize the chat. Um, but I want you to look at these tools that are currently on the screen here. And I want you to think about if you have used any of these tools, okay? We have things like Immersive Reader, one of my favorites, which is Amazon, Gmail, if you have a Gmail account, PowerPoint, Edpuzzle, things like Google Maps, Netflix, Grammarly. If you're a big music lover, like I have Spotify on almost every day. Facebook, if you have an Alexa or if you use Siri on your iPhone. Um, I've never been a Android user, so I don't know if they have something equivalent, but if they do, that's the same thing. And then Google Translate. And if you want to drop in the chat, please, feel free to drop in the chat as well. And I can't see any other reactions, but I'm going to assume, right, that just looking at this list, that you've used at least one of these things before, right? If not at the very least, like you get your Netflix and chill on, or Amazon, right, or Gmail. And the one thing that all these tools have in common is that they all utilize AI, right? Amazon obviously uses AI most commonly in its recommendation systems, right, to analyze customer behavior and viewing patterns, right? And they suggest appropriate products. Likewise, Netflix and Spotify do something similar to recognize patterns in your listening or your viewing. And then they recommend movies or shows, or on Spotify, they'll recommend music and podcasts. If you use Gmail, like I use Gmail every day for work, and Gmail uses AI and machine learning specifically in their spam filtering, right? And then they also have something called Smart Compose, Smart Reply, then it uses like language processing, right, for their grammar and spell check within your emails. So all of these things are using AI. And I tell you that because, like, I want you to know that AI does not need to be seen as this big, intimidating thing, right? I want you to think as AI as something that's going to help you and empower you, right? And give you more face-to-face time with your learners. Because when it comes to the research, it shows that teachers who spend more time, right, face-to-face with their students actually have higher achievement rates. And so we want to give you back some of that time that you spend elsewhere. All right. So just to give you like a concept of how much time we spend as special educators, those of you who are in special education classrooms or work with special ed teachers, right? And this is on average. So obviously it could be more, it could be a little bit less, but we spend 4 to 6 hours per week on administrative tasks and paperwork, right? A minimum of 3 hours on preparation for annual IEPs, right? And then an average of 9 hours of preparation for triennials, right? So I think about my last year in the classroom where I had 12 of my 15 students were triennial IEPs. And think about like, that's almost 150 hours, right? Like of additional time spent on doing things outside of my school day, right? Because I often brought the work home. I was working on IEPs and paperwork at home, right? Progress monitoring, updating those present levels of performance. And that's just for IEP prep work, right? We don't even think about the other stuff that is often on our plates, okay? Um, and so things like more administrative tasks, right? Like creating those behavior support plans and working with your support providers. Um, so we spend a lot of time doing work that oftentimes, we're not paid for or compensated for. Um, and this goes just kind of into the next point, like why use AI, right? There was a study done by Imagine Learning, and they surveyed teachers back in the end of 2023, and just about teacher use of AI, right? And they found that about 33% of K through 12 teachers, staff, and administrators use generative AI for some classroom tasks. Um, Again, not everything. And going back to that what I said earlier about like it doesn't just because we use AI, it doesn't take the human, right? The teacher out of the teaching. But they're using AI for some generative tasks in the classroom. And what does that look like, right? What could they be using AI for in the classroom? And these are just some of the things that teachers noted that they were using AI for. So as far as administrative tasks go, right, they were looking at AI to help with IEP goal development. Um, they were looking at present level organization, right? How that is organized, transition planning, the creation of behavior intervention plans, evidence of implementation, right? So when you come to these meetings and you're asked, like, especially when it comes to interventions, like, well, like what was the frequency of the intervention? How often? What were the patterns? That's what we mean by this evidence of implementation, like logs, right? Um, as far as individualized student learning, it was looking at helping create and brainstorm behavioral strategies, accommodations and modifications for students. It was used in social stories, right? I can't even tell you the amount of time I spent after school with my little personal laminating machine, doing really janky looking social stories for my kids because that's all we had, right? And then binding everything afterwards, right? So just thinking about the time that's spent on these tasks, right? As far as lesson planning and classroom management, things like rubric creation, data collection tools, lesson plans that includes like scaffolds and outlines for students, using AI to summarize information in the form of PDFs that could then be used and pushed out to students via LMS, assessment recommendations, identifying key vocabulary words based on pieces of text, creating notes for students who have that accommodation listed on their IEP, things like creating classroom newsletters, right? Um, or independent work center activities for students. So these are some of those tasks that were identified as teachers having used, right, AI within. All right. So I'm going to talk a little now about just again giving you that context of where we're seeing AI in the classroom. Um, I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure we have time to actually get into explore some of this stuff. So we mentioned the personalized learning, right? The self-adapting programs. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I already mentioned, like if you use like Happy Numbers or IXL, it's using the AI to recognize where students are having difficulty and adjusting the content based on the student's needs. Okay. Some other places where we see AI, right? If your student uses a Proloquo to go device, right? The AAC communication device, um, that the app is actually designed, right, for people who cannot speak or who have difficulty speaking clearly, and it uses machine learning to adapt and personalize the experience, making it easier for the individual user to communicate, right? It's recognizing those patterns, and it's adjusting those based on the user's the need and frequency of what they're trying to communicate. Um, Another example is a program called Speech Blubs. Again, like these tools are helping students, right, improve their pronunciation or fluency or language skills, right? Um, the why behind it is because we can only do so much, right? Like with our speech programs and language acquisition comes a lot faster when there's an increased accessibility and frequency and access to these things. AI-driven tools for progress monitoring. I kind of mentioned this a few slides back, but we have a lot of tools that are now using AI-driven analytics, right? That can track student progress over time and identify areas of strength and then areas where those students might need additional support. A really good example of this is Google Classroom, that has detailed reports on students' performance and engagement. I'm going to click on this because I want to show you this. I hope it still links to this, yeah, the update to the press release. So this was again back at the end of 2023, but they noted some of their changes, right, about what was changing with their analytics. And I want to just kind of point that out. That if you are a Google Classroom user, right, you have these really cool analytics and metrics that are available to you for reporting out about the progress on your students. Um, so, and again, it uses again AI to recognize those patterns and to give you a really clean, streamlined looking report. So that's linked right there as well. All right. Another way that we're seeing AI is to support multilingual learners. I mentioned my story about my intern candidate using Google Translate with her newcomer student, but we also have tools, especially for those students who participate in home learning or online learning. A tool called Otter AI. It will transcribe the meeting. So if you're on a Zoom meeting, right, and you have a student who might need just additional time to process information. Otter AI and similar tools. Otter AI is not the only one, but it will transcribe the Zoom conversation for the student, and so they can go back and refer to those chat notes. Um, we also have reading and writing assistant through programs like Padlet, which we're going to get into in a moment. We have vocabulary and academic language support. If you've heard of programs like DIFIT, that would be a great program for vocabulary and academic language. And then we have those personalized tutors, right? So there's something called Tutor Me, and this is through OpenAI. And then we also have, I like Flexi 2.0. I feel it's more geared towards students. Um, and I'm going to just open it up so you guys can see. Can I get a thumbs up if you guys can see Flexi on the screen?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, awesome. Thank you. I just want to make sure you can see what I'm seeing. So Flexi is from the CK through 12 Foundation. And if you haven't heard from CK about CK through 12, it's an organization that provides free like curriculum and resources for teachers, especially in the areas of STEM. So I always used it for just additional support for my science lessons. And they came out with Flexi a couple years ago. Again, it is geared towards students, so I don't recommend using, for the most part, AI anybody younger than 13, right, in the classroom. So if you have middle or high schoolers who you're giving access to certain tools, this might be more appropriate for them. If you're using it as an instructional tool in the classroom, right, like you're modeling it and you're using it, like whole group, like I would say that's, a little bit different. But students can come to Flexi, especially if they're, if they're at home, right? Or you're doing this as a whole group, like precursor. Um, and they can ask Flexi for help on stuff. So they can say, I am learning about mitosis. Can you tell me more? And you can literally ask Flexi questions about content, right, that you're learning in the classroom. Um, and I see this being used as a study tool for students, especially for more challenging like concept like biology, right, advanced math, and just as a way to refresh maybe and to think about or to reconnect with content. And so it'll essentially take you through, Flexi will take you through some of the foundational learnings of whatever the concept is that you're trying to learn about, right? So it says, have you learned about mitosis before? It says, yes, but I need help, right? That's usually why students seek a tutor. They might have been exposed to the content in the classroom, but they need just additional support with the understanding and just solidifying the knowledge. Um, and so what it does, it creates materials for them to use, right? So it gives summaries, it has some images, it talks about vocabulary. It is there's a study guide, right? There's questions asked by students. And then there's actual lessons that if you as a teacher wanted to take back to the classroom and use, they refer to these lessons here. Um, and I just think of a lot of the GBTs that you're going to see, right? Like tools, because there are tons of tools out there now, including if you've heard of Magic School AI, they have their own GBT within the platform for students to use. But this is really student-based, and I really like it because they always link out to their to cite their sources as well, which is really important when you're when you're using AI. So again, those are just some tools to support multilingual learners. Um, what I'd like to do is I want to show you a little bit more about Padlet. And if you haven't used Padlet before, it's a great opportunity to get in there and explore. They've done in the last 2 years, they've put a lot of effort and funding into boosting some of their AI features on the website. Um, and just in their features in general. I can tell you when I was in the classroom, Padlet was probably one of the first tools I started using with my students. Um, I liked it, one, because it offered a space for all my students to collaborate simultaneously, and in ways that made sense to them, right? Padlet has always traditionally been able, when you go down onto a Padlet, to respond by text. But you could also upload a picture, and you could also upload a link, right? They've since expanded it to include a lot more, which we'll get into we'll get into in a moment. So I'm gonna go to Padlet and kind of open it up. Let me make sure I was signed in earlier. Let's sign in here. And like most tools that are available for teachers, Padlet does offer like a free and a paid version. I will tell you right now, we talked about like resource limitations, right? Never paid for any of my subscriptions for the tools I use, right? Because we couldn't fund it with my school. Um, some of that was alleviated when we got those ESSER funds during COVID to look at things like subscriptions. But as a longtime special ed teacher, I never did the premium options. Everything I used in my classroom was on the free models of these platforms. So do not feel like you have to go in, you have to pay for these things. They offer the free versions, and the free versions work just as well for the things that you probably use the most in the classroom. All right, so Padlet, just to kind of show you what it looks like. Whoops, let me switch over here. Um, Give me 1 second. Let me go over to my other Padlet here. And let's see. Okay. I'm going to stop share really quick and I'm going to go over and share my other Padlet here. I just have two accounts because I have one through my work and then I have one through just like my personal account. And the one through my work, I have a little bit more space on. Okay, can everybody see the my Padlet kind of gallery here? Thumbs up or yes, or let me see. Haven't checked the chat. Yes. Okay. Thank you,
Yes.
Guadalupe and Vanessa. Thank you. All right. So Padlets are really fun. If you go in, you can join using a Gmail account if you have a Gmail account through either your school or personal account. Again, it's free. You get so many Padlets. I think it's 3 Padlets initially, and then if you refer people, they'll give you additional Padlets. So if you use it and you say, "Hey, I really like Padlet. Let me like refer it to my co-teacher next door," they will give you additional Padlets to use. So it's really cool. You get your own little code. You can share that to your heart's content and start racking up those additional Padlets. Um, they have a whole slew of like templates you can start off with. I'm just going to start with just like a regular discussion board, and it looks like this. And I don't want to do AI right away, but I kind of just want to show you what it looks like. So this is a Padlet. You can customize everything, right? Title, the text, what it looks like, the background image. But I want to show you the different ways that students can connect to it and why it's particularly relevant for students who just need additional ways to communicate, right? And so when students respond, they go to this little plus sign at the bottom. And they can do things like they can upload their own picture, right? They can include a link. They can use the camera on their Chromebook or device, right? If they're using iPads or Chromebooks, you can do an image search. But I'm going to go to the 13 other attachments types that they have, and I'm going to open that up just so you can see. Um, like their offering initially when Padlet was like as far as ed tech went like 5 years ago, they were kind of behind the game and they've really stepped it up in the last couple of years. So students can now do a video recording, they can do audio recording, right? Because not, we recognize like not all of our students either are students with special needs or just those kids in the regular gen ed classrooms, right? Not everybody is comfortable coming in front of a camera and talking. So there's an audio recorder. If they wanted to show something on their screen, they can do a screen recording. If they felt more comfortable drawing, right, they could do a drawing. There's an option to include poll. They can pull documents from their Google Drive, which is especially helpful if your system is connected to like if you're using Google Ecosphere, right, for all your needs. There's an image search now. When I was a tech coach, my upper elementary students were like big into GIFs. And so they loved going onto the GIF and using GIFs to communicate, certain things when we were talking about like reading responses, right? Or things like that. There's a web search. There's even Spotify, right? Location, and then they can pull appropriate videos from YouTube. The thing that I want to show you guys, one of their newer features, right? They have this new thing called AI speech. But I really have been using the AI image with my students and even my adult learners, right? And working with educators with from Common Sense. Um, and this does the generative AI image creation right on platform. And so you can say like, write what you want to draw. Um, this is really great for students, right? We have a lot of students sometimes who get nervous or get anxious about creating, right? Um, I have a little girl who's very, uh, can be a perfectionist sometimes with her drawings and she'll get very upset if the drawing doesn't come out the exact way she wants it. And so kids who are particular with that, or kids who might be limited to how they access things on the computer, whether that's they have limited mobility, maybe they're operating the device with a switch, right? for students like that, these things can still offer them those creative outlets, and make it fun and something to like a talking point afterwards. Um, so just to kind of show you what this does, I'm just going to say a black cat sitting and drinking coffee, just so you can kind of see if you haven't played with this particular feature on Padlet, what it looks like. Um, and you're going to click the arrow, and it does take, just like most generative AI platforms or features, it does take a moment to generate, but then it kicks back a couple different images for me. And what I like to teach my students to do, we always write the prompt, right, when we're doing these. So I'm going to pick one of these things. I think I like this guy with a little collar on. Kind of looking like a pilgrim there. And I'm going to put in the caption, I'm just going to copy and paste that prompt. Um, and I put the prompt because when we work with AI, it is so important. The quality of the prompt will directly affects the quality of the output you get, right? The better the prompt, the more specific the prompt, the better the output at the end of it is going to be. And so when you're working with AI and your output is not like where you think it should be or where you need it to be, consider looking at that prompt again, and refining it, right? Being very specific. And I'm going to show you some resources that'll help with that. Okay, so that's just like one AI feature, right? In Padlet, it helps students, those wanting to be creative, right? I love, again, all the features of Padlet for the voice and choice. When we want students to respond to something, it offers immediate collaboration that students can get into. Um, I want to show you how I used it to create a lesson plan. So I'm going to go back here to this one. Okay. Um, and let me just move some things around here. Okay. So this was created using their AI feature. And again, I mentioned earlier, AI is not going to fix everything for you. It's not going to do everything for you in the classroom. And you shouldn't see it as that, right? But it is a resource for you to work more efficiently. And I want you to see it, as a tool at your disposal. So for that, we're going to go to the plus make at the top. If you're in Padlet, if you're signed in, you can follow along. And I'm going to go down here to lesson plan. And I'm going to create a lesson for us. And I'm going to start with, let's do reading. Actually, let's do life science. And I'm going to do topic, the grade level is going to be third grade because we talked about life cycles in third grade. And I'm going to put animal life cycles. And I want it to be anything standards aligned, right? I'm going to do Common Core and NGSS. As far as additional details, again, this is where that prompt, that like the information that you want to include in the prompt, right? So uh, uh, how do I want to say this? Be as clear, right? And include anything you think you might need, right? To get a better output at the end. So I'm going to say include hands-on activities, uh, a variety of activities within the lesson to address multiple learning levels and I like and tons of visuals and graphic organizers when possible. Okay, so all I did, right, in that prompt right there was I'm telling the system that in whatever you produce for me, I want hands-on activities. I want a variety of activities, right, within the lesson to address the multiple learning levels. And then I really like visuals and graphic organizers whenever possible for my students. Um, and I'm just going to click create again because it's Gen AI, it's pulling and accumulating those resources, right? It's going to take a minute or two to think about. Um, and while we're waiting, I'm going to say, right, like I could do this. I could sit after school and I can make a lesson. And I've made many a lesson, right? In the 14 years I taught. I looped with students, right? I had the same student one time for 4 years, kinder, first, second, third grade. Yeah, 4 years because he started with me in kindergarten. And there's only so many ways I can teach this kid about animal life cycles, right? Without getting repetitive. And him hearing the same thing from me year after year, right? And so again, that's where AI comes in, especially when you loop with kids and you're like, gosh, like I just need another way to present this content, or I need additional activities, right? And it helps. It's a great thought partner on what on the different things that you could do, right? Like I learned all the strategies, all the reading strategies back when I went to Cal State Long Beach and, did their teaching program. Did I forget a few of them over the years? Probably I did. And then, AI in this task creation like helped remind me that, oh, hey, like I did learn that. I can use that for this lesson, right? So again, it's a thought partner. This is not the end all. This is not what I would immediately take and go and share with students. There's always revision, there's always editing that's going to happen once I get that output from the AI system. So I don't take this and again immediately start using with the students. But did it save me an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long it would have taken me if I had been sourcing these resources individually and just using Google to pull stuff? Yeah, it did. Um, so I just want to kind of show you what it looks like when it helps you create this lesson now that's on a Padlet that can then you can take components of this and push it out to your students. You can take components of this and make additional Padlets for your that can be shared for students and group work, right? So you can see like on the first column, they always talk about the learning objective. It puts what my students need to know, right, by the end of this lesson. It has the NGSS standard that's tied to the animal life cycles that I want to talk about. It usually has an essential question, right? For this particular lesson, it says, how do different animals change and as they grow and develop throughout their lives, right? I don't know what a bike has to do with that, but I can go in there and I can edit that image to, again, like make it more representative of what I want the students to do, right? So I just go in there, I can remove that image and I can find another image. Maybe I want to put like little baby chicks because that's what my students connect with. Okay. So again, that editing and revision is really like an important step. You don't just take like the output from the AI and that you run with it. You still, as a teacher, need to come in and you need to edit and you need to see what works. You need to validate resources, that kind of stuff. Okay. All right, but you can kind of see what else they have. They have like instructional activities, right? They have like mystery bags, right? That's not something I've used since I taught kindergarten SDC, right? They have a lesson in direct instruction in which they've included the YouTube video that I could use for it. Again, anytime any resource is used, I always encourage to teachers to go and validate that resource, right? If there's a video component, you're going to want to go and make sure like to check that to and view that video before you end up using it. They have guided practice activities. They have a journal writing activity for the independent practice. There's extension activities, right? For those students. Maybe I have a couple students who are a little bit more advanced than others and they want to go. I've had kids come to me before and want to research their own things. So that's where an extension activity could come in. There's different assessment pieces that could be included, including more formative assessment. There's like the summative assessment, like quiz at the end. There's some closure activities, right? Exit tickets. There's some possible activities for homework, right? So again, this is like a great starting point. And it brings us back to the fact like how much time does it save you, right? And how can AI help increase your efficiency as a teacher? Because at the end of the day, we want more time in front of our students, right? I don't want to be spending like my hours at home doing stuff that could easily be a little bit more automated with AI. And so that was just one feature from Padlet. If I go back and um, let's see, what else have I used? They have some other great features as well, especially in like non AI features. Um, Anybody who is familiar with Google Jamboard, I was so disappointed when Google said they were getting rid of Jamboard. And Padlet came in and say, hey, like we have Sandbox, like why don't you check it out? Sandbox is essentially like a Google Jamboard. The only thing that they include, they actually have templates that you can use, right? Like, so like they have the Freyer model. If you wanted to do like I did KWL charts all the time in the classroom, right? Um, if you didn't want to use like a template, using just the post-it notes, kind of like Jamboard did, I could put some post-it notes on here. I can create something that can be then shared with my students. They can engage that active collaboration and real-time collaboration between my students, whether they're sitting at their desk or in their small group or however they're working together. It was just really cool. I cannot say enough good things about like the features that Padlet has. All right. I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure like you hopefully you had time to go like into Padlet. I've linked this resource about Charlotte's Web, right? Um, Again, the most important thing is to just go in and kind of play with some of these tools. Um, and I this is the prompt I used for that lesson plan. I put that in there so you could kind of see with the lesson plan assistant what I put, and especially for the additional details. Again, being as explicit as you can in those prompts is going to really increase the quality of the output at the end. All right. Ruth, I know you said 5 minutes at the end, so I'm going to go for a little bit more, and then I'll give time at the end for any additional questions. Um, yes, Ruth, I saw your comment. Jamboard, I love Jamboard. I was so sad to see to see it go away, but
Yeah,
now we have Sandbox, right?
I know,
So
but Google, everybody understands Google.
I
So
know.
it was like, oh yeah, Google. So there's a little extra bump in that learning curve.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at least we have something, right? Like there was a time where before
Sure.
Sandbox there wasn't anything, and like people are like, how are we getting
Yeah.
students to collaborate, right?
Yeah.
So at least we got something. We got something now. Another really cool tool, I tell teachers about all the time is Diffit. If you are a Google using school community, it's really great because they have integrations with Google. Um, just like Padlet, Diffit offers a free and a premium version. I get by really nice with the free version, and am able to do a lot of stuff with the free version. And if your school has money, again, I don't with just the state, the state of things in across the country in education. I don't know how money for things like subscriptions are going to look for the next few years. So really utilizing those tools that are free, but they offer really cool integrations if you use both Google and if you use Microsoft as well. So you can also use Diffit directly with PowerPoint and Word. Um, but I'm going to show you. Let me see if I can link to this. I'm not sure if I'm signed into this, but we're gonna find out right here. Okay. Um, other, it's gonna make me do this. Okay. So Diffit is really good. I mentioned it earlier as we were talking about just tools to use in the context of the classroom. It's really good for academic language and vocabulary support. They provide opportunities for resources for students, right? And there's different ways that you can connect with Diffit. Thank you, Ruth, for providing that link in there. Um, again, if you sign up through the link, it's free. I also have a code for you guys for a 90-day premium trial, which should get you through the end of the school year if you're interested in trying it, or you could save it for the fall, right? And at least get you through the first part of the school year next year. But it's really cool because you can start. It says literally with anything, right? If you're looking for something more specific, they have books, they have an article or YouTube link, they have text or PDF or vocabulary list. But I'm going to show you like what it does when you are just coming and you say, hey, like I'm going to teach a lesson about, and I'm going to stick with what I was doing earlier, animal life cycles, right? I want it to align to science. So I'm going to choose the NGS standard. For those states that have specific standards to them, for example, Texas, they do the TEKS, and so I don't believe they do NGSS. They have their own set of standards, so they do have some standards, state-specific standards alignment. But I'm doing NGSS because that's what we use in California. I'm going to do third grade, right? I'm going to find the one about right here. There's my LS1 about the life cycles, right? And I'm going to do set standard. And so all that essentially does is that it means like the resources that are created are going to be standards aligned. I can customize the resources, right? If I, for example, was doing, and this happens a lot, right? As a special education teacher, um, you might work with upper elementary students, right? Maybe I teach a sixth grade SDC class, right? But my SDC students are not reading at a sixth grade level, okay? They're reading maybe at a third grade level. You can come down here and you can tailor the grade level, the reading level for the students, right? So for example, down here, I'm going to put my third, if it's a third grade standard, I might put like first grade reading level, right? Maybe second grade. I had some students who read pretty well. You can tailor the language. So if you want English, they also have Spanish, Chinese. They have a whole slew of languages that it can be translated into. And then the type of text, because it's science, we're going to stick with the informational text. And it's going to say generate resources. And so let's see what it does here. Again, it takes a couple minutes to generate the resources, but here we go. So here's some of the resources that it kicks back to me, right? The first thing, it has an adaptive reading passage. So again, based on that reading level that I input, it has adapted the grade level text to fit that reading need. And yes, I've tried it live with other like upper grade levels. So even if it was a sixth grade standard, it did adapt it to like a lower reading level. Okay. They have like multiple choice questions. They have short answer questions. They have open-ended prompts. Again, could I sit down and do and create some of this stuff like by myself and curate these materials? Yes, I probably could. It just makes some of the planning a little bit more efficient on my end. What I really like they do, right? Like apart from having, whoops, there's an arrow loading that. The different visuals, right, to include. They do include the image source, so they're really good about citing their sources, which I like. I don't like programs that just pull and they don't tell me where they got their resources from. Um, but the ability to turn this now into things that my students can use either on and through our LMS, like Google Classroom, or if I wanted to turn, I tried to be as a paperless classroom as possible, right? Sometimes, I didn't like having tons of worksheets for my kids. I don't see the value in having a ton of worksheets, but I do think I love Frayer models with kids, and if they could do it using a computer. That was really cool because we got to work on technical skills at the same time as doing content information. So there's on the right-hand side, they have all these different things that they can turn those resources into. So I'm going to just do that. And let's see, let's do like a reading summary. And what it does, it saves you, again, it saves you time from having to create some of these templates or graphic organizers or reading response templates by yourself, right? I can export it as a PowerPoint. I can export it into Google Slides, or I can export it as a PDF. And I'm just going to export activity. If I wanted to customize it, if I wanted more simplified directions, I can edit this to my heart's content, which is really important, right? I want to be able to tailor the things I push out to my students as much as I can to fit their needs. Um, for the sake of just this demonstration, I'm just going to show you like just how to get to the exported material or the activity. So I can go to Google Slides. I can share it directly to Classroom, which I really like. Again, because if I'm using Google Classroom, it makes it easy to push things out, right? Streamline as much as possible. And I'm just going to show you just what it looks like in Google Slides. So again, here's the materials that they just showed me. I have this image analysis, right? We're looking at the frog life cycle. Um, all of this is editable, so
Hi,
students can.
Kristen.
Hi, Leah.
I don't want to interrupt, but they're saying they can't see your screen.
You can't see you guys can't see the screen right here?
We
Oh,
only see the blue posted.
oh my goodness. Okay, hold on. I am so sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Let me go back here.
Also, just a time check, we're at 3:10.
Okay, let me
Not to stress you out anymore,
and then I'll wrap up.
but that's beautiful. Go ahead. We're
Okay.
fine.
Unmute. This was just the output, right? From that DFIT activity. And it has, again, every single one of these resources is editable, which is what I want as both a teacher and for my students to be able to access the material. Being on Google Slides, I really like it because students can import images. They can make it theirs, right? Like anytime you have a Google document, students can import audio, they can import pictures. I like that they can make it theirs and again increase that choice, the voice and choice that we talked about earlier. Just finishing up, if you're interested in trying out DFIT, there is a code right here again for that 90-day premium access that gives you a few more features than it usually does. I'm sorry that we didn't get through all the presentation today. It was a little ambitious. I'm gonna stop my share right there. There's just so much, and again, the thing that I'd like to impart on you is this, like, if you find one thing you're excited to try and play around with yourself, and you get excited, playing with it, can you just imagine like what your students would feel like being able to engage with the content that way, right? Especially in a way that hopefully increases engagement in the classroom, and accessibility to content. And using AI. And again, the AI will never take the teacher out of the equation. It's more of a thought partner for you to work more efficiently, and hopefully give you more face time with your kids. So I will hand it over to Ruth. Ruth, I am so sorry I've taken a couple of your minutes back, but I just want to
No
make sure
worries,
everybody
Kristen.
has. I'll PDF those resources and put it in the file so everybody can kind of go through. And if there's questions, I'm here. I love chatting about this stuff. So
Thank you so much. There was just an amazing amount of resources and
awesome.
information. And even if you're not in the classroom yet, keep these in your toolbox for whatever you do in your work, because there are so many applications for this. So learned a lot. So that was great. Really appreciate it. I am dropping in the chat our link to our reflection, which automatically enters you into our opportunity drawing, and I will share the QR code. As Kristen and I joked, we have a tendency to be a little bit shaky on how to do the presentation mode in Zoom. Zoom likes to do its own thing sometimes with them. So, but there's your QR code and the link. I see a message, so let me grab that. Oh, no worries. And that's all we have. There's a few more sessions coming up this afternoon. I think I can't look at them right now because I'm sharing screen, but I don't know if Leah, you know what's coming up this afternoon. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I know on maybe the transfer opportunity
Yeah.
Cal State LA.
We have sorry, Ruth. We have the Go Teach and Go Lead, Cal State Long Beach teacher preparation programs, and then the NASA STEM careers for community college students and grads. And I am a math person, empowering all students to build and nurture and math identity. And last one is commitment to serve, career interest in elementary school teaching for male service. I hope I'm looking at the right day. Yes, May 6th. May 6th.
I know it's just we have been so lucky to have so many amazing presentations today and tomorrow and Thursday. So please plan to attend any that you can and sign up. So with that, Kristin, do you want to say any last comments? I want to thank you so much for your deep presentation. Lots to learn there. You can come back anytime and would love to do some more, get some more information and collaboration on this. Any last comments?
I dropped that for those who came in late. I dropped the bit.ly in the chat again. But again, thank you everyone for being here on a Tuesday afternoon and for sticking around despite my technical difficulties. So thank you.
Well, thank you. So if everybody's okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing and end the session. You do have a bunch of links in the chat, so just copy it and paste it somewhere. And thank you all for coming, and thank you all for being a wonderful audience. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.